The problem is that we are combating 50% of America. Wherever you stand, whether it's on one side or the other, it's like we're split right in half. And the only way to get out of this is by working together. The only way.
The Rational View is a weekly series hosted by me, Dr. Alan Scott, providing a rational, evidence-based perspective on important societal issues.
Produced by Soapbox Media.
The world needs evidence-based public policy now more than ever. Making the right decisions should not be partisan politics. Please help spread The Rational View by going to patron.podbean.com/The Rational View. Together, we can make a better future.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Rational View. I'm your host, Dr. Al Scott. In this episode, I'm interviewing a thoughtful, kindred spirit to the rational view, someone who has made it her mission to bridge polarizing gaps in society and work for the greater good. Please excuse my deep bass FM radio voice. I'm on the end of a nasty virus right now, but I hope you enjoy this discussion. If you like what you're hearing, please press like on your podcast app and come chat with me on the Rational View Facebook group. I'd love to hear your opinions on this interview and what you think. Thank you. Juliana Tafur is the director of the Greater Good Science Center's Bridging Differences program at UC Berkeley. She is now leading a campaign for connection to bridge political and cultural divides using resources rooted in science. She spent more than a decade creating spaces through film and mediated dialogue to bridge differences of race, culture, politics, socioeconomic status, and more. An Obama Foundation scholar at Columbia University, Juliana's work combines research on the science of human connection with lived experience, making her insights both practical and deeply personal. Welcome to The Rational View.
Thank you for having me.
So I've researched a little bit about your group and about what you're doing. Could you tell us a little bit about your background? I've discovered you actually have a dual Bachelor of Science degree in journalism and history from Northwestern. Now, I've always associated journalism and history as arts majors. What's the difference when you get a BSc in these fields? I'd be very interested in that program.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, I went to Northwestern, and the journalism program at Northwestern was a Bachelor of Science in journalism. I never attended a program that was not one, so I wouldn't know exactly what the differences are between the Bachelor of Science and the Bachelor of Arts. I will say that, Northwestern's journalism program is super rigorous, and this was 20 some years ago.
Do they have like statistics and I would assume this is for investigative journalism, so you could make scientific judgments or understand statistics in different things. Would they teach you statistics and that sort of thing?
At Northwestern they do, right? Yeah. It wasn't woven in the journalism program itself, but I think you're onto something there, that maybe it was a Bachelor of Science, because I think the rest of the courses that we got that were kind of foundational to the degree had to do with science. So yes. And I would just say, like, the rigor of kind of the boot camp that the School of Journalism was, in that they deconstruct the way that you write to get you to do it the Medill way. And
what's the Medill way?
Oh my God, 20 years back again.
I didn't know there was going to be a test.
Yeah. Well, things like misspellings of names are not allowed. That will give you a Medill F. The way you structure stories, the way you report on stories, what you choose to include, just the rigor, the journalistic rigor, which is not kind of detached actually from the work that I do in bridging differences. I think going into stories with such rigor and making sure all sides were covered, and I was remaining as neutral as possible in the interviews as well as in the final output, really was a very short step from approaching the world with a bridge building mentality and listening to people's stories and putting myself aside in the process of understanding where people are coming from and why.
So you're the director of the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley. I looked online. Its mission is to study the psychology, sociology, and neuroscience of well-being and teach skills that foster a thriving, resilient, and compassionate society. Can you tell me a little bit more about this center and the work that you're doing there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the center, as you said, translates research to practice. So we take oftentimes, research created by scientists in labs on the science of human connection, and we make it relatable and understandable to the general public and to practitioners in different fields. We do the same as it relates to bridging differences, in that we take 14 science-based skills for bridging differences and we make those accessible. And that includes things like listening with compassion and perspective taking and self-distancing, which are things that we might be talking about today. But what does science tell us about how we can find shared identities, for example, with people who are different from us? And how do those theories in science apply to real life? And that has inspired the way that we frame concepts and skills for audiences, as well as the way that we run programs. And we have several programs that we are running in communities as well as in academia with universities, where we are disseminating these skills and allowing people the opportunity to practice them and to tell us how it is for them when they are practicing, so that we can then inform the science again. And so it's a loop where we take from science, apply to community, learn from community, take back to the science. And hopefully we're always evolving, because these things are always evolving.
That learning step that you talk about, the taking data back to science, are you publishing papers, or how are you doing that?
Yeah, we are improving our resources. So we have a Bridging Differences playbook with some of these science-based skills for bridging differences. And we're constantly thinking of new ways to not only frame the work, but new science that's come out that can inform the work. And from the work back to science in dialogue with scientists, to understand and make sense of what we're seeing as the work is being applied and implemented. And so papers, more like landscape analysis, reports, and toolkits that can be taken back to communities and universities. I will also say we have a Greater Good magazine, which is an award-winning magazine that's to be found in our website. And we're constantly publishing things in our magazine as well. Okay. But it's not white papers. It's more of what can the audience, what can practitioners, what can leaders easily take from articles that are digestible and easily understood and apply them to their work.
I see. So your group is leading a campaign for connection to help Americans navigate the stress and conflict surrounding the election. This seems a timely endeavor. The American public seems more polarized than ever. How did we end up here?
Yeah, so I'll just share that while I was an Obama Scholar at Columbia University, I got a chance to go deep in kind of conflict transformation and conflict resolution and narrative change, and kind of the deep exploration of what makes Americans want to come together, what are the ways in which Americans can come together, And what does science tell us about it, right? And that's the work that I do at the Greater Good Science Center, where we invite folks to come together using science as the basis of it, using science-based skills that allow people to understand that this is not something that we're coming up with, that feels good only, right? That there is a backing and that it is grounded in empirical evidence of what happens to our bodies when we're engaging, as well as what are the outcomes of experiments where folks have been brought together, and what are the right conditions where, if put in practice, it is making it easier for folks to do that.
Yeah, I've always said that, communicating across the polarized divide is the most difficult thing, because social media has these silos where, you just hear your position over and over again reflected back to you, and you feel like, you just put up walls and are not even aware of the other positions. You basically live in two different realities. So from what you've learned, what works? How do we break these walls?
Yeah. So I know you had previously asked, how did we get here? So I'll just give very brief context as to how we got here.
Sure.
Many reasons why we got here, but a few to name. I think demographic shifts in society and in the context of the US, right? We are the biggest, largest experiment in kind of multi-faith, multiracial democracy, and how those different groups come together to coexist, to collaborate across differences is an experiment. And I think the threat of groups that seem like an other has been real in the psyche of many Americans. And that includes people who look differently, people who think differently, people who believe differently. So thinking, more sociopolitical in ideas about the world, religion, as well as people who come from different places. What does it mean for the American way of life to expand, to include all of those people, and for us to not think of ourselves as us versus them, but as everyone, as us and us? We might not be the same, and that is okay, but not being the same doesn't need to be a threat to our way of life and to our way of being. And I think certainly social media has put us in a place where the echo chambers are only feeding us with what we think the world is, and that is creating what we call meta perceptions of what we think the other group is and what the other group thinks of us as a result. And oftentimes, science shows us that that is far from the truth. Not only are people not what we think, but people are not thinking that we are what we think they are thinking. And
that's confusing, but yes, I follow you.
Yeah. The problem with perceptions is that there is a perception gap, right? And we are approaching the world thinking that this group is against our way of being and our way of life. And we must eradicate them. We must dominate them. And that's where we are in US politics.
So, the question becomes, what should we be doing? We seem to be losing ground all the time, and things are almost collapsing, it seems. How should we react?
Given the current times, it's very easy to retrieve and shut down for our kind of mental health sake, for the sake of getting by with life, getting things done that must get done, working, taking care of kids if you have kids, right? Like functioning in society. I understand if many folks are just overwhelmed and exhausted and extremely stressed by what's happening. And I also understand if retrieving for the sake of survival is what they're doing right now. That's all perfectly understandable. At some point, we need to move away from that. At some point, we must recognize that the only way out of this is together. I understand if many are also like taking up the activism that is trying to eradicate those who are trying to eradicate them. And that is also a perfectly understandable response. The problem is that we are combating 50% of America, wherever you stand, whether it's on one side or the other. It's like we're split right in half. Mm-hmm. And the only way, unless we're going to split the country, the only way to get out of this is by working together. The only way. Those bridges have to be built. The reckonings of you are different from me, but I won't dehumanize you. I won't create ideas in my mind about everything that you must be because you voted for X. It's hard to do, especially given the times.
Yeah, I've seen this myself. I'm a member of a particular hobbyist Facebook group that just went full on anti-MAGA, basically calling them all racist bigots and booting anyone who didn't toe the line. And I responded to a meme from one of the mods suggesting that maybe this isn't the best way to win friends and influence people. And then it's like, no, they deserve what they get. And then, they muted me for weeks just for saying, you're not helping things by doing this. You're actually contributing to the problem.
Right.
But it's very cathartic to be able to ridicule the others and laugh at them and make fun of them, but it doesn't help, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because they probably assumed that you were one of them by saying that. Mm-hmm. When it seems from what you're saying that you just had the best intention. And that's where we are. We are in a place with cancel culture where if what you say appears to be what I'm thinking that you're saying, I'm just going to cancel you out. Mm-hmm. How do we move from that?
Yeah. What's the plan? What is the Greater Good Center telling everyone to do?
Yeah. And I just want to be clear that, as the Bridging Differences program director, this is definitely kind of existential for me. Like, this is the way I approach the world. This is my mission in life. I don't want it to sound cliche, but, I believe in it wholeheartedly. I've also been challenged over the last month with thinking how this work applies in the current context and trying to find language and messaging that speaks to what we're asking people to do. Mm-hmm. And I want to be so clear about that because I don't want to either, talk about these concepts in this preachy way, and I don't want to sound out of touch. So I know that by asking folks to do what I'm saying, I know deep in my heart we need to do as a society to overcome this gridlock. I know it's hard. I know it requires courage. It requires discomfort. It requires a reckoning of who we are and who we've become. And we must do it. So all of those things are true. And we're not asking everyone to do it now if they don't feel ready for it. We're not asking everyone to do it at all. Like, there may be folks who will not be able to do this, and that's okay. Right? So, like, what are your boundaries and parameters for engagement? And what are you capable of doing? So I'll start off by saying that when we ask folks to bridge differences, we're not asking them to bridge differences if someone's denying their existence. or if respect isn't present.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like two main ground rules for engagement, right? Like, is the other person accepting you? Is the other person respecting you? And if you are not feeling those things, consider whether you should engage or not, right? We are not asking you to do anything that will go against your own mental and physical well-being. If you do have those things, are we asking people to stretch a little bit out of their comfort zone and do something that takes courage? Yes, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But not in panic mode, right? Stretching out of comfort. That said, I understand that beginning to bridge with someone in the current times who is so different from you that you are not meeting any of those prerequisites, or you are totally in panic mode, is not right. Is not the right thing to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
So there are longer bridges, and that would be one, right? Where you're bridging with someone who is just so different and seems to have almost like a different moral compass, right? Like that is hard to do and requires practice. So consider starting with smaller bridges, right? Bridges where either you have a built relationship, respect, love for the other person, and they're not like a total stranger with strange ideologies. And we have many of those in our own families,
mm-hmm.
where it's like people that you can't avoid, people you're in connection with and actually still love and are having a hard time understanding why they have certain positions or think about certain groups a certain way. So start there if you're able to. That may seem like a long bridge to a lot of people who have estranged relationships with people they love. So if that is too long of a bridge, then you start within a smaller, even circle, right? Within people who are more progressive, perhaps, who are willing to question, like you did with your post, is this helping? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Within the progressives, we have a gamut, right? We have folks who are ready for activism and like, let's go, like fight in the gutter. Let's build campaigns that fight back. You name it, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
like who would even fathom considering violence, right? Like that's the extreme.
Yeah.
And then there are folks who, although it's hard, are still more rational and are understanding, or at least in their hearts know that the way out is by seeing each other and eventual collaboration and cooperation. And those are two extremes within the progressives that need to be bridged.
Mm-hmm.
It's the extremes of how do we even get out of this mess? Right.
Yeah,
and
deep
conversations can be have about one way or the other way is the way out.
Yeah, even finding a strategy amongst people that have roughly the same moral leanings and the same beliefs is difficult because everyone has their own strategy as to what they want to do with this.
Yeah.
So that's very important. It feels like it's backing away from the real issue, though. But we're at the stage where we have to.
What is the real issue to you?
To me, the real issue is that we have two different polarities that are at each other's throats. Mm-hmm. And if you look at, say, U.S. and even Canadian democracy, democracy is based on the willingness to let the other people govern when they win. Mm-hmm. And, that's kind of broken down over the last decade or so, where, it's basically just filibuster and block and do not give the other people a chance to implement an agenda. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, one of the most dangerous things is we've given up on, we no longer have a willingness to accept the other people as people with viable viewpoints.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think bridging differences is the way to acknowledge the other people as people with viewpoints of their own, whether you think they're viable or not. But at least in the process of understanding those differences, you are not dehumanizing them. You are not reducing them to a caricature.
Mm-hmm.
You are taking the time and effort to understand why they believe what they believe.
Yes.
And when we get past the issue and tap into who people are given how they grew up, what they heard in those circles, the schools they went to, all of a sudden you begin to paint a picture of a person who has been impacted and influenced by their upbringing, and you begin to understand why. And you may still disagree, but the humanization allows you to really tap into something much deeper. It allows you to tap into the person under the issue. And what that does is it may not get you all to agree on the best way to proceed on the issue, but it allows you to lift the burden that you were carrying of assuming that this person was X, Y, and Z. And it allows you to move into a place of, okay, with that reckoning and understanding, perhaps we can work towards something, right? Perhaps we care about improving our schools or our neighborhoods. And maybe we join in a shared goal that allows us to work past and with our differences. And that is progress. That is where progress begins. So you may not start at, given the current times, I want to listen to you and everything that you want to tell me about this current administration and how happy you are with everything that's happening, right? Mm-hmm. You start at the place of, tell me more about you. How did you get to appreciating and valuing what's happening right now? Right?
Yes, yes.
And is there something there in the story sharing that you can appreciate that gives you an aha about the depth of this person's way of being?
It's very difficult to listen without judgment in that case. Mm-hmm. I think the normal response is to say, well, that's a lie. That's it's bullshit. You're misled.
Uh-huh. Well, and that's why you're not tapping into why they think what they, or you're, sorry, I'll say that again. And that's why you're not tapping into the issue or their politics. You're tapping into them, the person, their experiences, their upbringing. What's there? What's deeper than the issue? Because to the issue, we can all say, you're blindfolded, you're brainwashed, that's a lie, where are you getting your news from, etc. But when you get to them, then you're seeing them. Hopefully you're seeing them. And I know that's hard to get to. And this is where some of our science-based skills for bridging differences come from. So I want to make sure I kind of provide you with some also practical kind of guidance, especially for folks who are having a hard time.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. Please elaborate a little on those.
Yeah. So I've been talking a lot about how we get to humanize folks who seem so different from us and what's a good place to start. And interestingly enough, science tells us that when you consider details, and you don't even need to engage or interact with the other person, just thinking about details that define someone beyond their political views can begin to do the trick. So, for example, you would ask yourself, do they prefer broccoli or carrots? Or are they a dog person or a cat person? And you don't actually need to know the answers to those questions. They don't need to be telling you the answers themselves. Just thinking about the question and thinking about potentially what the answer might be can help you begin to shift the way that you see them in that you begin to humanize them. You begin to assign qualities and traits that make you go past your mental block of they are this or they are that. And I am closed off to the fact that they're this or they're that, and they are nothing else. And if you take it a step further, then you actually try to learn something more personal about them, right? By engaging, interacting with them, understanding details about their job, their family, or their hobbies. And then science does tell us that discovering those personal details make us see folks who are different from us with more warmth and more connection. So an easy first step, at least in the, do they like broccoli or carrots, or do they like dogs or cats, right? And hopefully you are working your way up to actually seeking to engage. And, you know, how you do that, there are multiple ways to do that, whether it's like a relative that you're having a hard time with and inviting them for a cup of coffee, so that you can listen to them. But even before you get to the listening, you might want to engage in some perspective taking. Like you might want to, in your head, again, think through what might be informing this person's way of thinking, of being in the world. And even before engaging, how that might open you up to, okay, maybe it's this or that, and maybe they're not as evil as I thought, and maybe that gives me a little more courage to actually engage with them and listen to what they have to say. So thinking of a person and maybe recalling of a specific moment when you disagreed is a good way to do this. And then deeply putting yourself in their position and imagining the situation from their perspective, and how they might have experienced it, how they might have felt it, maybe given who they are. Okay, listening, right? Listening seems hard to do these days. It's actually how I got to this work. So I value it and love it. It's foundational. There's a quote I love that says, being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable.
Wow.
Beautiful, by David Augsburger in a book called Caring Enough to Confront. And that's the gist of it too, right? Like listening is just such a powerful way to let people know that you care about them or that you love them, right? Like it is truly so close to being loved. And people don't know this, but listening also breaks barriers down. It allows people to perceive us just by the mere act of listening as more trustworthy. And it also encourages people who we're listening to be more open-minded and less defensive. And research says even less focused on their self-interests. So when you understand all of that, you understand the power of what seems like an act of serving someone when you're sitting down and listening, or like an act of, I don't know, just extreme discomfort. If like the person that you're listening to is someone who is saying things that you don't agree with, just know that it's such an empowering act, and that science tells us that you will almost, without saying anything, but just listening to the other person, you will change how they perceive you. And by default, everyone in your group or everyone who they assumed would be like you.
It's certainly a complaint of the right that we hear a lot about, the cancel culture and the fact that, you know, they don't want to listen to our positions. They shut down, they drown us out. They censor us on social media. You know, this is a big complaint of Elon Musk when he took over Twitter. There's been censorship and our positions haven't gotten out. And then the other side as well, your positions are misinformation and dangerous. they should be censored. It's quite a challenging situation, especially, a lot of it was based on COVID and health advice and stuff. People were dying. It was very, I think that instigated a lot of that stirred up a lot of emotion in all the groups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the fact that neither side is listening is a complaint. It's also a reality. And listening is seen as kind of complacency, right? Or like, and then from our own side, it's like, why? Right? Shouldn't we be fighting them? Shouldn't we be creating structures and programs that defeat them? Right?
Yes.
And no. I mean, yes, you can do that. But are we going to get out of this mess by continuing to do that? And that's the real question. It is going to take the listening.
Yeah. I mean, from what I've learned is you need to get to the point where you can, have them trust you enough to describe their logic, right? And if you go in and say you're wrong, you're lying, they'll just clam up and become defensive, and they'll feel that their basis of existence is being attacked.
Exactly.
And you can't do that if you want to have progress. You have to say, okay, walk me through your logic here. And, if they see you as someone who listens, as you say, that gives you the possibility to question some of their assumptions, at least in a non-confrontational way.
Yeah. I mean, what's beautiful and powerful is that just the mere act of listening changes how they perceive you, because they are sincerely feeling loved. We are not sincerely listened to on an average basis. If you stop to think, when is the last time someone intently, purposefully, presently listened to you, my guess is that you're going to have a hard time thinking when that was, or that may not come as easily in your mind. So just to know that you are breaking the barrier, for starters, like you said, the barrier of they don't listen to us. Well, I took the time to listen. And it may not be that I took the time to listen to change your mind, because that is not the purpose of bridging differences. The purpose of bridging differences is to come together, to hear each other, to see each other, and to understand that even across our differences, there are things that we can not only work together towards, but that we may be able to appreciate. Maybe at the root of some of these differences are holding the same goals in mind, right? The goal of feeling safe within a community, the goal of wanting to protect certain groups. Like maybe the goals are the same, but we have different ways of achieving those goals. And if we can tap into things that matter through values, which is another science-based skill, then maybe we can agree on a goal that we can work towards together. But it takes tapping into so many different layers of who we are and what we value, and displaying openness towards the other person to the point where we are at a place where we can just collaborate on something. And that something may not be like the hardest thing that the other party or side is trying to combat, but what is that joint thing of things that matter to you and me that we can both get around? And once we do that, is there something that we can work towards that maybe is a little bit harder, that maybe both sides are having a harder time getting to or agreeing on? But we think of this work in little steps. We think of this work in increments. We're not going to solve the toughest issues, the biggest divides all at once. We're not going to do that. I mean, not in the current climate. So where do we start so that we can begin, one, to ease the anxiety and the fear in our hearts and the burden in our shoulders, right? Like
Yeah.
This is not good for our well-being. So we start there, and then we move towards things we care about, shared goals, solutions to problems that matter to both of us. And maybe, just maybe, we'll be at a place where we can work to solve bigger things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there is a disconnect on what people see as the scale of the problem between socioeconomic groups. If you look at the indicators, we're living in one of the most prosperous civilizations in history at the peak of its productive power, but people are unhappy because there's a lot of inequity. So depending on which group you're in, the severity of the problem is completely different, I think. And, that's why so many people think things are broken when objectively they've never been better in most measurements. I think there's been psychological studies that inequity is more important to people than actual prosperity in how they feel about their civilization. I don't know if you've heard of that, but if someone is doing a lot better than me, I feel really badly about where I'm, because it's unfair, right? And this unfairness is really affects people a lot more than the fact that, yes, I'm living like a king compared to 100 years ago. People don't see that, right?
Yeah. And I think at the root of that unfairness is the fear, right? It's the fear of the other. It's the fear of they're coming after our jobs. They have more possibilities than we do. There's unfair DI policies that are putting people in positions that they shouldn't be. And what does that mean for my group? And that unfairness I want to combat. I mean, we are seeing that very, very present right now. And lots of people believe it. I don't. I don't think any of these constructs of us versus them really, really exist. I think they're being used against us. And
agree.
A divided population is a conquered population, is a population that is so busy sorting out their differences, or not even fighting against their differences, that we are missing the big picture. We can be easily manipulated and controlled by this fear mindset and scarcity mindset of, if they have something, we don't have something. I think those are all social constructs, and it's a shame. It's a true shame that that's where we are as a society.
Yes. So, I mean, so you're fighting this with your group, and you're putting out, information to help people bridge these gaps. Is there anything, that you would like to say, what's the most important message that you want to get out to people, to help with this situation?
I think there are several science-based skills that we can use given the times. And I want people to be empowered to know that there is a way out, that it's hard to think that there is a way out. But tapping into things like, we are different, but are there shared identities that we can not only discover, but try to amplify so that we can begin to work together as believers in X, or citizens of X, or people who are tired of this mess, right? We do know that 3/4 of Americans are desperately tired of this division and polarization and are seeking a way out. Can we find that, use that as a shared identity to get out of this mess? It seems harder to do these days, but we do know the sentiment is real. We do know people are seeking a way out. And I just our hope is that all of those who are tired and know the many ways in which polarization, division, social fragmentation is affecting them, that they, whenever they feel ready, feel compelled to do something, to start small, to begin to put science-based skills to bridge differences in practice. It's like micro dosaging of science-based skills. Maybe it starts with you're doing an activity weekly, whether it's like a class of sorts or a school visit or a PTO meeting or whatever it is that you're doing in the spaces that you are. Can you add to that? An invitation or a willingness to try to ask a question of someone who goes to that meeting who you don't know well, right? Or can you make an attempt to collaborate and sign up for a group, a subgroup within your group to do something with someone who you've never collaborated with and who seems different from you? Like, what are little steps that you in your own life can begin to take? Like, we're not talking solving national politics. At the community level, at the school level, at the neighborhood level, like, what can you do today, tomorrow, next week? Like, it's up to us to begin to build those muscles. And if you're asking or if you're expecting someone to come with a program to bring Americans together across big differences, I mean, there are programs like that out there. You can seek those too. But it's more sustainable, and science also shows us this, when it's driven by a goal that you have, by a need that you have, by a problem that you want to solve. And then you start there because you care about whatever that is. And you put that in practice first. Is there a neighbor that you've never talked to? Right? Like, there are little things we can do. So I just want people to know that while the national scene in the US is overwhelming, within your communities, within your circles and spaces, you can begin to put some of these things in practice. And that is empowering. That gives you agency. And that is my source of hope right now as well. Well, I can't control the national scene. I can control what I do in my life. I can control programs that we run in communities in the sense of like trying to influence and translate and disseminate the science-based skills for bridging differences. So groups within communities are brought intentionally together. That gives me hope. I'm not solving national and global problems, but I am instilling practices in folks so that they can do something. They can do something with others in the groups that they're a part of. And maybe then we begin to change the way that groups interact, that groups see each other.
Yeah, I think that's, you may think that you're not affecting politics, but politics starts with these interpersonal relationships and ends with that. So, it's just a series of all of these interpersonal relationships building up over a whole nation. So kudos to you on the work that you're doing, and good luck. We're rooting for you. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us about your work. I appreciate your time. And if you'd like, I can send you a Rational View t-shirt for spending the time.
I would love that. I just want to say, I know you said it at the beginning of the interview, but I truly invite people to check out the 7-day Campaign for Connection Challenge, where when you sign up, you get one science-based skill in your inbox a day.
Okay.
So that you can begin to, one, understand what these concepts are and how you can yourself begin to practice in the spaces that you are in.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate this.
If you'd like to follow up with more in-depth discussions, please come find us on Facebook at The Rational View and join our discussion group. If you like what you're hearing, please consider visiting my Patreon page at patron.podbean.com/therationalview. Thanks for listening.